morning, good afternoon. I see today's attendees are popping up. Thank you so much for being on time. If you were here earlier this month, this is our third session this month where we are diving into all the best practices and secrets of how to make your upcoming spring fundraising event a success. If you were with us for the past 3 weeks, this is the third week. We are so grateful for you. Thank you so much for attending all the sessions. If this is the first time you are joining our speed learning session, welcome. We hope you find all the information very useful, and it will be helpful for you in planning your next nonprofit fundraising event. But we are on time, so we're gonna get started. My name is Yulia Zhernovaya. I'm head of strategy and growth at Giveffect. Giveffect is, if you're not familiar, is a 10-in-1 nonprofit software platform designed specifically for those nonprofits who are looking to streamline their operations and manage everything in one place. Donors, volunteers, events, marketing, grants, you name it, right? To achieve better operational efficiency, achieve higher fundraising results, but also finally operate as one team without silos and downloads, uploads. You know it better than me. Today, I am so excited because I'm joined by Samantha and Mildner, and we are going to be diving into seamless spring events logistics made simple.
Thank you so much for having me, Yulia. So I am the Director of Client Relations for ACE the event. And I've been with ACE for a little while now, but I have a lot of nonprofit experience. ACE the event, we're your one-stop shop for all nonprofit fundraising events, and we're really there as your on-site help to make sure that your events run smoothly and to help increase your fundraising. So I come from a background of heavy nonprofit experience. I worked in nonprofit for the last decade, most recently as the area director for Best Buddies. So I have a lot of wealth of knowledge of fundraising events, and excited to be here today to talk with you all about my experience and how ACE can be there to help you guys.
This is so exciting. We're so happy to have you. Because first session, just for everyone who maybe did not join us earlier this month, the first session we had, we dived deeper into campaign creation. The second session, we talked about video and visual storytelling. And I'm so excited to kind of wrap it all together, like what is happening on the day of the event, right? It's so important and can't wait to dive in. But before, just a couple of housekeeping items. Again, for those who are joining maybe first time, speed learning session is a very quick 30-minute session, but is full of useful information, right? We're going to spend about 20 minutes talking, like interviewing, talking about all the best practices. And then the last 10 minutes of this session, we're going to spend for live Q&A. So please don't hesitate to leave your questions throughout the session. You can leave them in the chat. You can utilize the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, Zoom screen. So please leave us questions. We are so excited to dive into all of them later in 20 minutes. All right. So without further ado, Samantha, I wanted to start with, I think this would be kind of a good question to start us off. What are some, well, maybe top 3 challenges you've seen that nonprofits face when it comes to the execution of fundraising events?
Absolutely. I think the first thing is always the budget. That's always the thing that people, especially nonprofits, have sometimes a very limited budget and what they can do to make a successful fundraiser. And that's always going to be everybody's concern, is making sure that they're getting a good return on their investment from their budget and what they're able to do with that budget. I've really seen from my experience, working in the nonprofit field, we had a very minimal budget when I first started doing the fundraising events, and we weren't able to spend a lot on our large fundraisers. But, after putting in some years of hard work, after working with ACE the event, because we worked with them for 3 years, and seeing how on-site help really changes your event, we were able to increase our funding 250% over
Oh,
three
wow.
years. Yeah, huge. And so I think the return on investment
Yeah,
is massive. So just investing a small amount of your budget at the beginning and then hopefully increasing it over the years is really helpful.
that sounds good. How do you have any tips in terms of how to approach that conversation, maybe when you're starting out first time and you don't know how
Yeah.
to bring it up?
Oh, absolutely. I think, planning out as early as possible
Mm,
always helps with budgeting, and really diversifying your revenue for your budget so that you can make sure that you have enough space to be able to spend on certain things.
yeah.
And you really need to look at, okay, where in my budget is this going to fit into,
Mm,
whether it's sponsorships or
mm,
individual donors helping out your nonprofit. There's so many different avenues on where you can get your revenue from to help with budgeting and make sure that you're able to fit this into it. But
yeah.
planning is the biggest part.
Makes sense. Makes sense. What about registration? I've attended some of the
Yes.
events and it definitely, I feel like first impression, but also sometimes can be quite a challenge.
Yeah, registration, man, that's always been a really tough one. The event that I did with Best Buddies, we had 1,000 people coming through
Oh,
the door
wow.
for this. Yeah, very large. And getting 1,000 people through the door at exactly 6 o'clock is insane. But um, it's amazing how much it changed over a couple years. And we had lines, people were waiting for 45 minutes, and then hearing, how we can fix it was really, really impactful. One of the things that we heard that we could do was using our bidding platform for the night of the event to sell tickets. That way, everybody's information was preloaded in. It got people through the door
Mm,
faster. And we didn't know that that was a possibility until we had Ace at
mm.
our event and they told us, this is an option for you guys. And
Uh,
we didn't even know. And it streamlined the process so well.
That's such a good point. And I feel like we might talk more about it, but I think when it comes to the technologies, a lot of time there's so many technologies and
Yes.
technologies are always improving. So there are, for example, in your case it was tickets, right? And other organization case, it can be like, oh, I didn't know my technology has an auction capability. So something like
Yes.
that. So really learning, taking the time. I guess it goes back to planning, right? But it sounds like taking the time to learn your technology and
Yes.
understand what it has. So then you can implement it either whether it's registration or some other component of your event is critical.
Yeah, absolutely. Just being open to learning ahead of time. I think the
Mm,
farther in advance that you're able to learn the platform that you're using, and whether it's Giveffect or any other platform, it's so important for people to make sure that they know what all is available to them so that they use it in the best possible way for their
mhm.
event.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the third one, do you have anything for us as a challenge? Please
Yeah,
do.
absolutely. I would say, just timing of your event is always going to be the
Mm,
biggest thing, and making sure that you plan out your event, you know, uh, from start to finish, not just the pre-planning, but the day of planning of your timing is so important. At ACE, whenever we have on staff come, we always like to have at least 15 minutes to talk with the volunteers and the staff and run
mm,
over the platform that people are using and make sure that we have an understanding of how they can use it to the best possible way. And being able for us to come in and say, okay, we're meeting at 5, like here's when we're doing it, and having that is so helpful. So whenever I was in the nonprofit space,
mm.
I would have everything from when we arrived at 9 o'clock in the morning until 11 p.m. when we would leave that night. And every minute of that day was planned out, and
Mm,
it helped tremendously and that's what made that event so successful because we had everything timed, we had every plan. The more you can schedule things
mm.
out, the easier it's going to be for you.
Sounds good. I mean, that's so important. I can just imagine that schedule and
It's a
so many
lot.
things that goes into it. But that sounds amazing. I wanted to dive into some of the things that you mentioned because I think a lot of people are interested to learn more. I think when it comes to especially working with volunteers, right, and
Mhm.
trying to make your event successful, what are maybe some of the key positions someone should organization should consider for the day of the event, like Do you have any tips on the training, assigning roles? Can we dive a little bit in that?
Absolutely. I think depending on what you have at your event, you always want somebody to be in charge of certain aspects. So if you have a silent auction, have a head of volunteers in charge of the silent auction. If you have somebody, if you have a raffle going on, have somebody in charge of the raffle and make sure that they're there night of and are helping to steward that, because it's going to make things so much easier for you. And then as on-site staff, when we'll come in person, we know who that person is to go to and say, okay, you were in charge of the silent auction. What's X, Y, and Z that we can help with to make this run smoother? And having people ahead of time to really be in charge of those things is helpful. And also just getting volunteers in general. There's so many different avenues on ways you can get volunteers, you know. I think that's the point of a lot of fundraisers is to get new volunteers a lot of time, and to find people who are going to want to be as passionate about the
Right.
fundraiser that you are, and to make sure that they're there to help make it more successful.
Okay. And just to wrap it up a little bit, so when we look at the volunteers, right? So basically consider all the key events or things that are going to be happening through the night, right? I think
Yes,
like obviously it's registration or greeters, but then if we have auction, then for auction, if we have raffle, then raffle, and so on and so forth, right? For those key components, kind of the
absolutely. Yes,
fantastic. Um, Now, when it comes to technology, we did talk a little bit about it, right? Technology is the key. In your case, in your previous organization, right, made
absolutely.
such a huge difference in terms of your registration, getting people through the door. When it comes to the technology or different tools, and especially like day off event and logistic and communication, do you have any recommendations of what to use, how to use, or even how to communicate maybe with whatever tool you use?
Absolutely. I think, you know, you always need to be prepared for using technology on site. Is there Wi-Fi at your venue? If
Mhm.
not, are you going to have to rent a hotspot? You know, sometimes these things people don't even think of. I remember at our event, we found out there was free Wi-Fi at our venue. We're so excited. We're great. We'll use the free Wi-Fi. Come to find out that it timed out all of our iPad technology after 10 minutes. So
No.
registration, yeah, it was a rough registration because it kept timing it out and we kept having to re-log back in. So from there, we learned from the experience. The next
Mhm.
year, we purchased a Wi-Fi package and had no more issues with the Wi-Fi connecting, and all the iPads stay connected. So, you know, learn from your experience, but make sure that you know how your technology can stay connected. It's very
Yeah.
important. Also, just making sure that all of your volunteers know how to use the
Okay.
equipment. If they don't, do a volunteer training ahead of time, not just day of. Maybe you need to
Mhm.
do some pre-trainings with all of your volunteers and staff so that they know how to use the technology the most efficient way possible, which is something that we offer, you know, making sure that people are using it in the best way possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And something I wanted to add, just based on kind of our experience and talking with a lot of nonprofits, I think you choose technology that works best for you, right? Something
Mhm.
you already use, like Giveffect is an option, but there are a lot of technologies out there that can help you to manage the event. But I think I always like to point out is whatever technology you choose, make sure that it's seamlessly integrated back to your main CRM database source of truth. I
Yes.
don't know if you had this experience. I've definitely heard so many stories about like spending a month of reconciling the data, moving the data, making
Oh
sure that all
yeah.
ticket holder were moved back and so on. And it just like seems like we're creating more work for ourselves
Yeah.
versus making it easier.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've spent too much time on one project and then finding out, oh, there's a better technology. Let's use that. And then we switch to it. So just finding out what works for you and your organization is going to
Mhm.
be what makes your event more successful.
Yeah. One of the questions we talked a little bit about ROI, but on the registration page, we kind of had a question talking about doing it ourselves versus hiring a technology, specialist through a staffing company and so on. Like, when is the good time to hire someone, I guess, or when would be the good time to hire someone? And in ideal world, how long in advance would you get in touch with them to make sure it's all
Absolutely.
smoothly communicated?
Yeah. I think as far as when you want to get some people to come and help, there's not really a right answer. Obviously, the sooner we know, the better, just because it's, I think for our nonprofit partners' sake,
Right.
the longer you have to plan something, the easier it's going to be on you. And, we can come in at any time, but for your sake to have that peace of mind to know, okay, you're going to have staff there night of to come and help with the technology aspect is huge. And, we have our own kind of set minimums of how many staff you should have and how many volunteers you should have.
Mm,
And, we really use that as our guiding point. We always say
mm,
for every 50 people that you have attending your event, you should at least have one volunteer. And then once you hit 75 guests, you should really consider having a staff there to help run the event. And that's really kind of helped our events to be successful. And we've seen um, the larger the events get, the more staff support that they need.
mm,
For the event that I ran with Best Buddies, with 1,000 people at it,
mm,
we had two head managers come in person, and we probably could have had more, but we had 35 volunteers. And we did
oh
volunteer
wow.
trainings ahead of time with them and trained every single one of them on the process.
Mm,
And of course, choose what you need to do for your nonprofit. If
mm,
if you're not able to do in-person staffing, make sure that you do your research and look into the best ways possible that you can
mm,
manage your technology ahead of time and make your event successful, because it is possible. But the return on investment of having staff there, I mean, I've seen it firsthand. It's proven that it works, and it is very helpful to have that
mm.
assistance.
Yeah. I wanted so you mentioned that 50 guests, one volunteer. Is that for
Yes.
registration or in general?
Yeah, just in general, really, for
General.
every 50
Okay.
guests, you want a
Yeah.
volunteer to be there. Not
Okay.
necessarily registration, just
I
because it kind
see.
of depends on, especially if you have a VIP hour. Maybe you have
Mm,
the first 50 people coming for the first half hour and everybody else is coming later. It's so dependent, but really just the total number of guests that
mm.
are there, to have at least one
Okay.
volunteer.
Yeah. And then you did mention ROI and you gave example earlier, right? For Best Buddies, but I do want to dive a little bit more into that because I think it's one of the biggest, every time we need to invest to technology, any type of services, right? We want to know what's the ROI. So can you maybe share maybe another example of the
Yeah.
ROI? What can in general nonprofit expect if they decide to like hire a tech specialist through in staffing company?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the return on investment that I've seen personally, I mean, like I said, we hired us, Ace the Event, the staffing company, for 3 years. And the very first year they came in and we were raising, $180,000. By our third year this past year, we were raising $385,000. So you can see the growth since we've
Mhm.
hired, and had in-person staffing. And just I think one of the biggest things that is very helpful is being able to have outsider people post event and for them to say, okay, these are the ways that you're using your technology so effectively and well.
Mm,
Here are the ways that I think you could really
mm,
increase this and make it even better. And one of the things that we were told was about our bid numbers and how we weren't, putting them in the system in the best possible
mm,
way to get people through registration quick enough. And, seeing that change over the couple of years was huge. And
uh,
then people enjoy your event and want to come back the next year. And that's return on investment of people. And I think people, you don't always
mm,
necessarily, it's not just about the dollars, it's about the people
mhm.
coming to your event. And you want
Right,
people to enjoy themselves and for them to want to
right.
come back and keep contributing year after year, which is just as important.
Yeah. And I think there is another point, and you probably have more insights, but I think there is like immediate return on investment. We had the
Right.
event, this is the amount that we raised. But then there is this return on investment that you're not going to necessarily see for maybe some period of time, because now your employees have time to actually interact with your major donors or in general with donors, right? And there are new
Yes.
relationships that are getting created or move forward, and then you're probably going to see great results coming sometimes after.
Exactly. Having Ace at our event for the last couple years, it allowed me to go around and speak to our donors and, being able to talk with them about, okay, this is this event now. Great. Let's talk about the next year. How are we going to get you guys more involved in the mission? And I
Mhm.
think having those interactions at your event and being able to do that because you have staff there is so important
Yeah.
and so needed.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love that. And then do you have any advice? You did talk about the training, but I wanted to ask if you have any advice for everyone, how to maybe structure training. Let's say we have 20 volunteers or so on, like if we want to do the training ahead of time, should it be on the day of the event? Should you schedule something, I don't know, via Zoom or in person? Any tips to make
I
it smooth?
always I always say go based on your budget first and
Mhm.
what you're able to do. Some nonprofits, you can go much larger, and that's great. I
Right.
always recommend to do a volunteer training ahead of time because I've seen firsthand what it's been able to do for our events and how it's been able to make it successful. But if that's not in your budget, then do one day of and send video trainings beforehand. Do
Mhm.
any there's other ways besides in person and face-to-face volunteer trainings that you're able to do to help support your
Mhm.
volunteers and to get them prepared. And I think as much as you can share with them prior, the more successful your event's going to be. And I mean, so many platforms have video trainings and things
Mhm.
that you can
Mhm.
show to make sure that your um, volunteers understand the platform ahead of time. So that's going to make it a lot easier.
Yeah, I love that. And I guess the last question before we go to live Q&A, by the way, if you want to ask any questions about, logistics events and day of the event, advice and so on, please feel free to utilize the chat or Q&A session. We'll get there in a second. But my last question is, and then I guess it goes to our right, but how logistics experience affect outcome? We talk about like donors and so on. Is there any examples? How does it affect outcome of the event that maybe we didn't talk about yet?
Yeah, I think there's always going to be things that are out of your control. And
Mm,
being able to plan those ahead of time, weather, for example, if you have an outdoor
mm,
event or if there's suddenly, if you live somewhere where maybe there's a random hurricane or a blizzard, I mean, there's only so many things that you can do to control those things. But having a plan, any plans in place and backup plans is what I recommend. I mean, the amount of backup plans I had for every
mm,
scenario is so important to have, and for everybody to know what those plans are, and not just for your event as a whole, but maybe vendors not showing up. Maybe it's all of a sudden the Wi-Fi backs out. What do you do? What's the plan? Who's the technology person that day at your venue to fix those solutions, knowing who to go to with these solutions. So just always having a backup for everything is what I can't recommend most for logistics.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. This was so insightful and such a great information. And I learned a lot, and I hope so did everyone on the call. So
Thank
with
you.
that, let's jump into our Q&A. Please feel free to submit your questions again in the chat or in Q&A session. But we're gonna start with a question that I received on the registration page. You did talk just a little bit about it, and I think it goes so well. The day of the event, right? That schedule that you had from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Yeah.
Is there, maybe even for yourself or in general for the event, is there any advice or key elements on how to create that schedule and make it, successful?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I really learned creating that schedule is who's overseeing the different aspects of the day to day, because it
Mhm.
I understand there's very minimal staff. I was the head staff for
Mhm.
our events, and we only had um, 6 staff in the entire state who was running our entire nonprofit in the state. And
Mhm.
being able to delegate is so important, whether it's board members, whether it's volunteers, whether whoever is there to assist, make sure that you're delegating those and having certain people set up different parts of the day. It shouldn't just be one person doing every single thing. Try, as much as you maybe want to do things by yourself, make sure you
Yeah.
delegate.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds fantastic. Another question we have is where's I'm gonna read we're a small nonprofit, right? Is like hiring staffing company something that the large nonprofits do, or can we benefit or from it as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Any size. I mean, we've worked with AC event has worked with teeny tiny schools, and
Mm-hmm.
we've worked with massive nonprofits. Every size has hired us. We've worked with um all kinds. And I've seen the benefit more with the smaller nonprofits
Mm-hmm.
than anything else, because they're the ones who need the most help, and they have the least amount of
Right.
staff to run the
Mm-hmm.
event, so they're the ones who could benefit from this the most. And I think, start small with what you're able to do, your
Mm-hmm.
fundraiser, and whatever you're able to do the first year, do that, and then add into the budget for the second year to be able to maybe do
Mm-hmm.
something bigger. And the point of us being there the first year is to help make your event that year more successful, and to
Yeah.
raise more money, and to do all those things. So
Well, I see. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think especially when you're wearing already so many hats, right? And with so many roles, it makes I totally understand. Another question we have, what about and we didn't talk about it, so this is great. What about the post event? What
yes.
nonprofit should, it's so much work goes into planning the event, right? You spend months and months, and then before it's the weeks and so many hours, right? When the event ends, what are maybe the key things that nonprofits should do right after?
I think the nonprofits sometimes forget that the post event is, if not more important than the day of the event, because people are so excited from your incredible fundraiser that you just did. Now's the time to strike. See if people want to join the board, want to join your committee
Mm,
for planning the event, want to sponsor for next year, or to become a general donor for the entire year. I mean, there's so many ways that you can get these people involved that were
yeah.
just at your event. And I think also thanking them is one of the most important
Mm,
things that you can't forget to do, because they did just possibly spend lots of dollars at your event, or put a lot of time and effort into that event. So be sure that you're putting in the effort to thank them post event,
mm,
and use the your volunteers who are at the event, and listen to them. What didn't work from your perspective as a
mm,
volunteer? Uh, from us as managers that come to your event, look at the notes that we send you post event on what worked and what didn't, and start planning now. I know a lot of people have multiple events throughout the year, and you can't always immediately go into the next event, but as much as you can within that first month after your event,
mm,
start looking at, okay, what big picture things can we do now to fix for next year, so that we can make this even better in the following year.
I love that. So it's all planning in advance, right? The minute you finish
Absolutely.
one event, ideally,
Ideally, yes.
if you can, but also while the memory fresh, for all the employees and volunteers, but also for all the attendees, donors, sponsors, and so
Yes,
on. So that's
absolutely.
fantastic. All right, so we are almost on time, only 1 minute left, and I really wanted to thank you, Samantha. What a great conversation! So much valuable information. Um, right now, for everyone who is attending, my colleague Tara putting some links in the chat. There is LinkedIn links to myself and Samantha as well. Um, always, we love to connect with everyone. Please feel free to connect with us. And also, there is a booking link for myself, and there is Samantha's email. Please feel free to be in touch, learn more about the events, or also ICE the event as well. Lastly, for those who are joining our call today and those who are Giveffect clients specifically, we have a couple of exciting announcements. One, tomorrow, our colleague Hannah Fox will be doing a special session for workshop on events and campaign creation. So stay tuned for the email, or if you already received it, didn't sign up yet, feel free to sign up. It's going to be a great session. And we are so excited to announce that Giveffect actually is partnering with ACE the event for in-person staffing and so on. So again, stay tuned for official announcement. It will be coming soon. But for now, just know if you are interested in on the day of the event support or pre-event support as well, right? Please feel free to be in touch with your account managers, but also be in touch with Samantha as well.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Thank you so much, Samantha. And everyone, thank you so much for joining. Have a fantastic day and join us again next month for our speed learning sessions. Bye.